The strongest and thinnest material ever known to exist can actually clean your water better than anything else we use today. In this video, I'm going to tell you how we're beginning to use this miracle material to clean our drinking water in huge industrial processes and how we can really soon start to do it in our very own homes.
So thin, but it's very thin.
One limit to it.
It's bendable, it's stretchable, and you need all of those things in one material. So if you ever want to build flexible electronics, so bendable displays and things like that, you need something like graphene.
Prototype animations show graphene applied to super thin bendy plastics, making phones and tablets foldable.
So to actually make this miracle material, you just draw a lot on a paper with a graphite pencil. And graphite is basically a bunch of stacks upon stacks upon stacks of carbon atoms in a layer sort of like this in a hexagonal form. And they get, as you write on the paper, they get distributed across, and these layers are distributed. So on this page right now, there's actually still quite a few layers stacked on here, not as many as in graphite here, but still a few. And you can actually separate these layers even further with a piece of tape. You stick the tape down on your drawing and take it off. You get this really dark layer of graphite. And you can actually distribute these layers even further by folding the tape over on itself. And then this way you get an even lighter layer. And this lighter is just a few less layers than this one. And you can go even further, continuing this process until you get one single layer. And you can also do it by using your thumb and getting the graphene all over your thumb really good, like that. And you can spread your graphite thumb all over the paper until you see a mark that's basically invisible. So as you can see, it gets darker each time I smudge, and this last one here is almost nearly invisible. And this is as close as I could get to a single layer of carbon atoms. And this single layer of carbon atoms is actually given a name. It's called graphene. And even though it doesn't look like much, it's actually the thinnest and strongest material we know of. It's also a great electrical conductor. It's actually a superconductor. So it can conduct electrical current without any resistance, which is incredibly better than copper. Graphene is so thin because it's a two-dimensional structure. It's made up of a single row of carbon atoms, and it's the strongest because these carbon atoms, when they're bonded together, are actually known to be the strongest of any other bond. So strong that a really, really long piece of graphene, single layer of carbon atoms, really long, can actually hold a soccer ball. Something that's so thin you can't even see is strong enough to hold a soccer ball. And it's actually made up of the exact same stuff as diamonds and coal and graphite. The only difference between them is their structures. This is what a diamond structure looks like. It makes this sort of triangle pyramidal shape, and this is what graphite would look like. These stacks of graphene bonded together. Graphene has actually gotten a lot of popularity in the scientific community, especially in its purposes to replace the super energy intensive and environmentally toxic processes of desalination, removing salt from water so we can drink it. Because desalination produces a super salty brine waste, and this brine often makes it into our rivers and lakes, contaminating both our drinking water and destroying the habitats of aquatic organisms. And graphene can be embedded in traditional membranes for water filtration, and it can even remove everything from biological contaminants like bacteria and viruses, organics, pesticides, and pharmaceuticals, which have become a lot more popular in the news for water pollution, and even organic chemicals, or inorganics, things like heavy metals and PFAs, forever chemicals. And we can do this through a pretty cool and fairly new method called membrane distillation. And membrane distillation is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's distilling water to become water vapor, and then using a membrane traps everything that's not water vapor. When the vapor makes it to the other side, it condenses and becomes perfectly good drinking water. Membrane distillation also takes significantly less energy than normal distillation and even reverse osmosis because it uses vapor pressure instead of osmotic pressure, basically pushing particles through a membrane to get them to the other side while keeping contaminants on the side you're not drinking. And we can use a lot less material in MD, membrane distillation membranes, compared to reverse osmosis and even activated carbon membranes. You can also apply this concept of MD, membrane distillation, in your own home. And in my design here, I also included a water ionization complex to give users a super convenient feature of getting super acidic or alkaline water. And both of these waters can be used as a cleaner, where acidic water, so less than 2 pH, has been proven to kill 99.9% of microbes in seconds, while alkaline water, pH of 11 and higher, is great at cutting through grease, so it's great laundry detergent, plus no harsh chemicals. So we can use less energy for the point where waste heat can already be used that's already produced in industrial processes or even solar panels. There's also a lot less waste from the membranes used, and they even last longer with their incredible anti-fouling abilities. Fouling is when contaminants accumulate on a membrane and leads to a bunch of nasty things like your contaminated clean water from your filter and a lower flux, so the speed that the water comes out of your filter. Besides all of these incredible benefits of membrane distillation, it also has one pretty big setback, and that's membrane wetting. And this is a huge problem because when membranes get really wet, they lose their stability and fall apart. But adding graphene can actually help stabilize things, though it's not a forever solution yet. Another really important solution to this is using hydrophobic membranes, using membranes that their properties fundamentally repel water. So with adding graphene in these filters, another fundamental problem about graphene itself is that it can basically do anything: water filtration, energy storage for new batteries, solar cells, even disease sensors and delivering drugs in the body. The one thing it cannot do is get out of laboratory testing and move into the commercial market. Because even though there's been so many massive breakthroughs since its discovery in 2004, it has some pretty big commitment issues. One big one is toxicity. It has shown to be kind of toxic to ourselves and other organisms, especially aquatic ones. We don't really know all the properties of graphene yet because it's relatively new. Another big one is that it's pretty expensive to produce on such a large scale. And using tape like this is a pretty good way to make graphene. This is not an ideal way to make graphene on a large scale for everybody to use in their products.